What's up, you guys? Your boy Ben Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast here. Much love to all my brothers out there, to all my subscribers out there. But we're gonna get down to the nitty gritty here, guys. And that Clippers and Mavericks series is intense now because now the series is now tied up at 2 games to feast after the most impressive performance of the season, blowing out the Dallas Mavericks 106-81, um, even up their best of seven series at 2 games apiece. So, one of the things I want to particularly talk about is one of the big adjustments that the Clippers made in preparation for the when the series shifted to Dallas. Okay, so one of the big things that I really took away from last night and what happened on Friday night was is that the Mavericks, who was perhaps one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, really got themselves exposed in the worst way, and I'm gonna explain to you why right here. Now, whether there is this the injury to Luka Dončić's neck has something to do with it, who knows? But it's much more than that. Okay. Now, one of the big things that Tyronn Lue did in preparation when the series shifted to Dallas was playing more of a smaller lineup by taking Zubac out of the starting lineup and putting Nicolas Batum in there, and then also taking Patrick Beverly out of the starting lineup and putting in Reggie Jackson in there. With that being said, is they went to more of a smaller lineup, but much more scoring in terms of their starting lineup now. And also in terms of the defensive positioning, they were able to do much more switching and be able to guard the perimeter shooters of the Dallas Mavericks much more effectively than they did in the first 2 games. So, but one of the greatest strengths that Rick Carlisle has is that he's able to close the gap on this more talented team by disguising his roster limitations, but even more clever in terms of the misdirection he can get. But that kind of tactics can only lead you so far. Now, the best chance was to bid an upset against the Clippers was to basically hold them at bay just long enough to overwhelm them. Well, basically they were up 2-0 and had a double-digit advantage before in Game 3 before everything fell apart. Now, as I said before, taking out Zubac out of the lineup was pretty much key because Luka Dončić throughout the first 2 games was having his way. He did whatever he wanted against him. Okay. Anytime they did the pick and roll and Zubac would switch on to Dončić, Dončić ate him up like crazy. But then after they took him out of the starting lineup, that basically took that away from them. Now, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have pretty much stepped up their play now and now have scored more efficiently. But last night in Game 4, what I saw was that they pretty much attacked as if the side defenders didn't even exist at all, basically generating any type of shot they wanted, no matter what the Dallas Mavericks threw at them. During the regular season, Dallas had one of the best defensive squads in the league against top 10 offenses. It's a testament to the habits and the fortified through the midseason reversal. But that can only lead you so far. And Dorian Finney-Smith is good and hardworking, defensively. But in terms of the matchup against Paul George, I mean, George is having his way with them. I mean, it's not even fun. And Maxi Kleber, who's a mobile big man with great defensive range, but he's being asked to guard one of the most efficient forwards in the NBA, and Kawhi Leonard, who's also a two-time Finals MVP award winner. Okay, and he's playing through a very painful Achilles injury, and Kawhi Leonard's been pretty much eating them up. So you have that being said. Okay, so over the past 2 games, both Leonard and George have combined for 114 points on 62% shooting. So pretty much so much of the Clippers' possession were simple as two of their stars getting to the rim, but all walking there. And the issue isn't the game planning or the scheming of the personnel. It's just that both Finney Smith and Kibler to match up with those two guys is just too much for them. All right. The fact that they've been regularly erased by a quick first step or a single crossover tells me 2 things. They can't defend them, and their weaknesses of their defense is starting to being exposed in the last 2 games. Now, clearly, heading into Game 5, heading into those challenges, the ball containment is a liability because yet whenever the Clippers go small to space the floor around their stars, it negates whatever rim protection Dallas might get from Kristaps Porzingis. Okay, so guarding a shooter in the corner just puts too much pressure on a 7'3" big guy and the drives that he's supposed to contest, which means someone like a George can drive without any concern of a second defender, and his every move is read and has been simplified. So put it like this: the big reason why I believe that Tyronn Lue took Zubac out of the starting lineup was that they wanted more shooting on the floor, but they wanted to drag away Kristaps Porzingis from the paint and make him guard out on the perimeter. And so far, it's been able to work because of that. Because of that, George and Leonard have been able to drive to the basket without much resistance. And if you try to help out and try to go off one of the shooters, they can kick out and basically shoot any three they want to. So it's pretty much simple as that. So playing the small ball lineup that the Clippers threw in there pretty much was a huge benefit for them. Because pulling Zubac from the starting lineup was an effort to take away the fish and barrel type of points from Luka Dončić, which was pretty much averaging 38 points per game in the first 3 games of the series. But last night he only scored 19. And it was just basically getting them out of the pick and roll, but also it left Dallas without much room to troubleshoot its defensive issues. And in the series, Clippers offense has been in the aptitude with Zubac on the floor this series, seeing as the benefit of his size has been undone by the cover he gives the Mavericks defense to hang close to the basket. You know, as we get into the series, as it continues on, now Coach Duran Lue has sussed out which the Clippers can play in this matchup. The Mavericks wouldn't guard Patrick Beverley, so basically Reggie Jackson took his starting job and put Terrence and also let Terrence Mann take most of the regular minutes. Nicolas Batum's passing and defense does more good alongside the Clipper stars than any other role players. That's why he filled up Zubac's position. And as the series goes on, the more tilts forward in terms of the deeper and more flexible roster in terms of the Clippers. So the issue with the Mavericks is this: they don't have the same luxury. In effect, the Mavs making their first playoff adjustment a month ago when Kyle Lowry put Tim Hardaway Jr. into the starting lineup, a move that paid off and notched 45, 49 points in the first 2 games of this first round series. But beyond that, their hands were pretty much somewhat tied because Dallas that scores 81 team is dead in the water regardless. But even if a healthier Dantes and sustained his shooting would go somewhat in terms of a defensive resistance to close out the series, this Carlisle would give Hardaway a shot at defending against either Leonard or George just for a change of pace. But it's not hard to see how that looks out because Hardaway has seen in possessions on both ends of the floor on switches and cross matches spread up against both of those two stars, and they pretty much ate him up without even trying. Okay, so switching Finley Smith against one of the stars could be a shot, but we've seen how much that results. And you also have to consider the fact that an injury to his Achilles he's got to deal with here. Okay, so right now, as we head into Game 5, Dallas is going to have to explore several options. One, likely bringing Josh Richardson back into the starting line as the brace keeper, who cannot who is not a normal matchup for any of the star players. Lining up Richardson, an already French defender candidate in the previous season against George, is one of the ideas that I think that could be in theory that could be better off for them. All right, what little that Tupac's class in this series for the practice so far, he struggled to stay attached to George and wins around screens and slicks into the paint. For much as the Mavericks could change, there's a question, especially after winning the first two games, the existing formula of what type of defense really has to gain through the alternatives. Okay, so they're going to have to really take some chances. The Mavericks are going to have to really take some wild chances in terms of the defensive matchups if they're going to have any chance of pretty much getting back control of the series. Because right now, the Clippers have pretty much said, we're going to play small ball. We're going to stick to the shooters. All right. We're not going to let Luka Dončić get off. All right. And the pick and roll, we're going to take that away from you because we're putting away our big man in terms of putting him on the bench. And we're putting an offensive liability and Patrick Beverley on the bench and putting both Batum and Reggie Jackson in the starting lineup to put more offense in there. And now it's creating much more spacing. So, with that being said, the Mavericks got to do something now. Pretty much the Dallas Mavericks got to do something now to try to shift the momentum back in their favor. And whether it's the neck injury, whether it's the defensive matchups I'm just saying the neck injury that Luka Dončić is going through, whether it's the defensive matchups they need to figure out, we don't know. But right now, the Clippers got all the momentum in their favor now. They pretty much threw the gauntlet and threw the major adjustment that now Quick Carlisle is going to have to figure out. Is he going to change the defensive matchups, or is he going to change the defensive zones or defensive schemes to pretty much take away the kind of floor spacing that the Clippers are having right now? Because they made it clear they're not going to start Zubac for the remainder of the series. They're not going to put in Patrick Beverley in there because they're basically limited in terms of the matchups. I'm not saying that they're bad players at all. I'm saying in terms of the matchups, in terms of the style of play that they're playing against, it's not the right matchup for them. And so Toronto lose pretty much threw the gauntlet out there. And so now we're gonna see what the Mavericks got in store for them as the series shifts back to the Staples Center for the pivotal Game 5 of this series. So that's just my 2 cents of how I see it right now. This has actually really been an excellent series. You know what I mean? If you thought last year's series was pretty much was fantastic, now they pretty much led up to the rematch of this season, guys. So there's going to be a battle to the finish, guys. So we're going to see what happens now in Game 5 tomorrow night. As the series now moves to Los Angeles. So that's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'm going to throw more, analysis videos about the other playoff matchups later on in the day. But with that, I'm out. Peace.